Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with 12 ridiculously underplayed symphonic poems. This is the sequel to 10 ridiculously underplayed symphonies. These are works that you may find on disc, but why don't we ever hear them in concert? They're so unusual and rare, and they don't deserve to be because they're just oodles of fun. And that's the point. Anybody would love to hear them, but, we talked about it before. Conductors are lazy, and orchestra management is lazy, and people are afraid of anything a little bit off the beaten path. Not people as in listeners, people as in manager types, the ones who help decide programming. Now, some of these, as with the symphonies, have popped up now and again, but most of the time, and that's what we're talking about, predominantly, you don't hear these things. And it's just a shame because they're wonderful. We begin with Liszt. We have to, don't we? The guy who invented the symphonic poem, theoretically, but more on that later. He wrote a dozen or so of them. Actually, there's quite a few more because he orchestrated piano works and did all kinds of other stuff. And aside from Les Préludes, you don't hear any of these things. And some of them are lovely and fun and enjoyable. Okay, yes, the orchestration's a little screechy. The form is a little bit iffy sometimes. But so what? If you want perfection, go someplace else. Don't ask me where. Anyway, we're starting with one of his least ever performed symphonic poems, Festklänge, which just means celebratory sounds. That's all it is. Celebratory thingies. It's a Festklänge. He wrote it for his girlfriend, the Princess Caroline Sayn-Wittgenstein, who was really kind of a grotesque person in many respects. She was a vicious anti-Semite who sat around smoking cigars and, riding her sled to the, convocation in St. Petersburg that sold like something that she sold. They were quite a pair. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, Festklänge is lots of fun. It's just fanfares and a triadic tune that you hear 30 billion times. And what's not to love? Honestly, give it a shot. It does have a really catchy main tune. Do 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 do. It's kind of like a gloss on the finale of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, only not. Anyway, it deserves to be performed. That's all I can tell you. People would just love it. I guarantee it. Next, Rimsky-Korsakov's Skazka. Skazka means fairy tale. And it's a fairy tale. It's a 10-minute long tone poem. Don't ask me why nobody ever plays it. I haven't a clue. It's delightful. It's full of Rimsky-Korsakov-isms. It's fabulously well orchestrated. It's got those lovely Russian style tunes. Occasionally, yes, people do Scheherazade, and you'll hear the Russian Easter Overture and the Capriccio Espagnol. Those are his 3 late orchestral works. But there's tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff he wrote along the way. Opera suites and other orchestral works. And, Skazka seems to have fallen by the wayside. It would make a great concert opener. It really would. There's just nothing there that anybody wouldn't enjoy. So after Rimsky-Korsakov, what do we have? Henri Duparc, Lénore. Yeah, what the heck is Lénore? Well, Duparc, as you know, or maybe not, is famous for having destroyed absolutely everything he wrote except for a dozen songs. That's all that survives. A dozen kind of murky, turgid songs, which never quite appealed to me. But he did allow to escape the axe. Somehow he forgot or didn't know where he stuck it or who knows what. There's a symphonic poem called Lénore. And you know the story of Lénore. Lénore is the old Spectre's Bride. Dvořák did it, and Raff did a symphony about it. And, it's the girl whose dead lover comes back to get her, and they have a wild ride, and then the sun comes up and the spirits dissipate usually, or they all get sucked down to hell, or, the endings can happen on a zillion ways. It's a fun piece. It's got like 2 tam-tam parts, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been recorded a couple of times, and no one ever does it, ever. And this is wonderful because it comes from a composer whose name is out there. But aside from those songs, nobody knows what he did. And so, yes, give this a shot. Give Lénore a shot. She deserves a shot. Poor Lénore. I mean, if you're going to get a symphonic poem named after you, then what the hell? So there's Lénore. Then Sibelius, the Wood-Nymph. This was the big discovery of the Bis Sibelius edition. An 18-minute long tone poem, complete, wonderful, beautiful, that Sibelius just never published or took the time to revise. It's an early work from around the same time as Saga and that kind of era from the 1790s. And it's a big, hairy, hairy piece of orchestral red meat. It's beautiful and it's fun to listen to. And when it was rediscovered, which was about 20 years ago now, I guess, it did get some play. I saw it live once. Someone did it. And especially Finnish orchestras and Osmovenska and those people, they were running around playing it so that people got to hear it once. And since then, it seems to have trickled away. And that's a shame. It didn't deserve to trickle away because it's really, really fun. And it's been recorded, thank God, a couple of times. But it hasn't seeped into the repertoire quite the way it should, I think. But then again, Sibelius is still kind of on the outs with so many different, national traditions. I mean, he's never been popular in France. I mean, Pavel Jarvi did a Sibelius cycle with the French orchestra for the first ever time just a few years ago. Unfortunately, it wasn't that good. Or, it was France and Germany, and he deserves to be internationalized. He's always been popular in the UK and the US and Finland, of course, and Scandinavia, I guess, generally. But, his music is still looked askance at because he didn't, go the way of the traditional avant-garde and do ugly atonal things and whatnot. Anyway, never mind. The Wood-Nymph is fun. It's another one of those, guy gets possessed by evil nymph things. I did a video about that. If you want to take a look up nymphs, and you'll see my video about how it's nymphs. It's a bad thing to get snookered by a nymph. So after Sibelius's Wood-Nymph, Glazunov, Stenka, Razin. Shostakovich did a wonderful cantata on the same subject. The execution of Stefan Razin was his thing. But Stenka Razin he was a Cossack sort of guy. He was the head of the Stenkas, or the Razins, or whatever they were called. And he was an ally of the Tsar. Then he was not an ally of the Tsar. Then the Tsar got pissed at him. Anyway, he got caught and they killed him. And the cool thing about the Glazunov symphonic poem, it's got love music with harps going like crazy, and the song of the Volga boatman. Da, 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 da. That thing? That's in there because it happens near or around the Volga. And it's a great tam-tam part too. It's exciting and wonderful and colorful, and again, not too long, and fun to listen to and fun to play. I played it once, never heard it live by a non-amateur orchestra. And it doesn't even have that many recordings. I don't understand it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I'm totally at a loss. Richard Strauss's Macbeth. Macbeth is one of his major tone poems. In fact, it was the second of, Aus Italian was the first one. But then he did Macbeth, and then, Till Eulenspiegel and Death of Transfiguration and Don Juan and all of those things. Well, Don Juan came first. But the point is that Macbeth is a fully big, juicy Straussian extravaganza that nobody ever hears. Maybe because it's bloody and violent and it ends loudly. Or is all the other ones sort of just dribble away to nothingness? I don't know. It's got a great tam-tam part. I don't see what else there's not to love. It's very programmatic. In other words, it's not philosophical sort of nonsense. It's actually, you can really kind of follow what's happening. You've got a theme for Lady Macbeth and a theme for Macbeth. And there's this huge battle in the middle that everybody gets mixed up in. It's just scads of fun, like all of these pieces. I mean, they're just terrific. It gets recorded, of course, a lot because people do Strauss tone poem cycles, so they have to trot out Macbeth. But it doesn't always get the love it deserves. The best performance is Jarvi's, by the way. Nimi Jarvi on Chandos, where all hell breaks loose at the battle with crashing tam-tams and horns going crazy. And oh my God, it's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Then after Macbeth, Joseph Suk, Dvořák's son-in-law, A Summer Tale, the sequel to the Azrael Symphony. This is another 5-movement symphonic thing like Azrael. Oh, it's gorgeous. The final movement, which is called Night, is, it's to die for. It's one of the great slow movements of the first half of the 20th century or something. It's beyond beautiful, and the whole piece is gorgeously scored and gut-wrenchingly emotional and expressive. There's a movement called Noon, which is hot stillness in the summer, and Blind Fiddlers, which has 2 English horns and solo violins and harps blowing away. And oh my God, I keep saying these things are great. This is an entire half of a concert all by itself. It really is. And it's stunning, a stunning work that fortunately over the past few years has gotten some decent recordings. So, goodness. Next, good old Schoenberg. Remember him? Yes, he wrote tone poems. The most famous one is Pelleas and Melisande, or Pelleas und Melisande, however you want to call it. Debussy's opera, and there's a Sibelius incidental music, and Fauré did it, and everyone did Pelleas and Melisande. It's the great, symbolist story. That's it, symbolist. That means fairy tale for grown-ups. She's sitting by a well, and she's dropped her crown into it, and Golod finds her, and she doesn't know where she is or what she's doing or why she's there, and he marries her anyway, and then gets really jealous because she seems to have an affair with his brother, or maybe he doesn't, so he kills his brother, and then she gives birth to a child who may or may not be his, but nobody knows, and she doesn't know, and it's just a miracle of symbolism. But Schoenberg's tone poem is a miracle of chromatic sludge. Now, I use that facetiously because sometimes chromatic sludge is beautiful. There's a lot to be said for artfully done sludge. And Pelleas and Melisande is the sludgiest of sludge fests. I mean, it's all dark and murky and grotty and slimy and just amazing. And it's a big, long Straussian extravaganza. Again, it's like a 45, 50 minutes long. It's big in one single opulent sludge fest. I've seen it once. I have seen it once, like 30 years ago. It doesn't get played very often. It really doesn't. It was premiered on the same concert as Zemlinsky's tone poem, The Mermaid, Die Seejungfrau. I mean, that was there too for some reason. And it eclipsed Seejungfrau because Seejungfrau was traditionally tonal, whereas this is starting to go off the cliff. But it goes off the cliff so artfully, doesn't it? And it really deserves to get performed more frequently, I think. I really do. Arnold Bax, the great British tone poet. I mean, how about November Woods? Yes, once in a while, people trot out Tintagel, which is a glorious work. Glorious. I mean, I played Tintagel in my community orchestra. I put it on the program, and we had such a good time with it. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. But there's a bazillion tone poems. Lately, people have been running around with The Garden of Fond, which is a seascapey kind of piece. But November Woods is like one of his biggest. It's 18, 20 minutes long. It's kind of like, well, Sibelius's Wood-Nymph, or all of those Celtic twilight, mythological, supernatural kind of goodies. And for sure we could do November Woods once in a while. It wouldn't kill us, would it? I mean, really? It's also full of chromatic sludge, by the way, but really gorgeous chromatic sludge. It's dark and brooding. It broods. Tchaikovsky. What about Tchaikovsky? He wrote dozens of tone poems. Well, not dozens, but a whole pile that get recorded in complete Tchaikovsky tone poem boxes. But not performed. Hamlet. Hamlet's a masterpiece. It's one of the trilogy of Shakespeare tone poems that Tchaikovsky did. There's also The Tempest, which we seldom hear, which is also gorgeous. But Hamlet is a very effective atmospheric piece. I mean, Leonard Bernstein recorded it twice. That's how good it was. If Lenny did it twice, then, I mean, my goodness, why don't we ever get to hear it? Stokowski recorded it. There was a time when Tchaikovsky's star was, in the ascendant, where Hamlet had a chance of getting recorded more frequently because people basically said, if it's Tchaikovsky, it must be good, which was actually a much better position than if it's Tchaikovsky, we should ignore it, which seems to be the position that a lot of people take now. So yes, for sure. I mean, Hamlet, it's we know the story. It's a great story. I mean, it's a great composer. It's just fantastically evocative music. And yeah, for sure we should play it. Oh, it's got a ghost. It's got murders. It's got Ophelia drowning herself. I get tired just thinking about some of these things. They're just so exciting, overwhelming, and beautiful music. So after Hamlet, Dvořák, the Wood Dove. Nobody does Dvořák tone poems. Who are we kidding? The 4 tone poems based on Czech folk tunes. It's the Golden Spinning Wheel, the Noonday Witch, the Water Goblin, and the Wood Dove. Those are the 4. And they're all fabulous. Oh my God, they're wonderful. The Wood Dove may be the greatest of all. It is so orchestrally sophisticated. It was premiered by Mahler, no less, with the Vienna Philharmonic, and Mahler learned a few tricks from it, particularly the cooing of the dove with flutes and the harp going. Mahler does that in the Nachtmusik No. 1 of his 7th Symphony. Mahler learned quite a few bits of orchestral gimmickry from Dvořák, and these late tone poems are lovely, absolutely lovely. They are full of wonderful tunes and very sophisticated and modern. Dvořák, of course, was supposed to be this humble little Czech peasanty kind of guy, right? And because he was a humble Czech peasanty kind of guy, when he writes a piece that's incredibly sophisticated and modern for its time, it really was. I mean, Strauss was writing his tone poems around the same time. Everyone just goes, no, it's not supposed to be like, it's supposed to be like Brahms. Well, no. Dvořák was the Romantic era's most versatile genius, as the title of my book says. And this is one of the pieces that really shows it. I got to tell you, I mean, that funeral march at the beginning, where the widow who's poisoned her husband is weeping crocodile tears. You hear the cymbals and bass drum, do 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 do, on solo trumpet, with the orchestra going boo hoo 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 hoo. Oh boy, Mahler learned a trick or two from that too. The start of the 5th Symphony. Great stuff. Great stuff. And last but not least, and fascinatingly, César Franck, Ce qu'on entend sur la montagne, to a poem by Victor Hugo, What One Hears on the Mountaintop. Got it? Ce qu'on entend sur la montagne. And if my perfect French doesn't get you, it's listed down below the video here in the description. Now, this was the title of Liszt's first symphonic poem. And since Liszt invented the symphonic poem, Liszt must have been the first symphonic poem, right? Wrong! Franck did this piece, which is just about as long, in 1846-ish, 47, possibly a year or two before Liszt, or around the same time as Liszt. I mean, Franck may have actually invented the symphonic poem. He's better known for his later symphonic poem, the Chasseur Maudit. And he wrote a bunch of symphonic poems, Les Airlides and Les Djinns, and none of them get played. All of them deserve to get played. But this one is really super nifty cool because it's the very first authentic symphonic poem. And, whether Franck or Liszt did it first is sort of academic, because Liszt's pieces, at least for a while, got played. This wasn't first played until like 1987 or something like that. It's only been recorded a couple times. But it's actually, I think, in some ways a better piece than Liszt's. I mean, it's more structurally cohesive, which was never Liszt's strong suit. And it's wonderfully scored and extraordinarily daring. I mean, Franck had surprises galore up his sleeve. And so if you're looking for a fascinating, wonderful, unknown, delightful, marvelous, completely unexpected symphonic poem by a master, try César Franck's Ce qu'on entend sur la montagne. If you can pronounce it, you will love it. I guarantee it. And even if you can't pronounce it, you'll love it. So there you have it, my friends. 12 ridiculously underplayed symphonic poems. Let's right a wrong and start playing them. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.